Now that we're past week 10 in the NFL season, I think it is safe to say we are down to 4 teams that can represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. In today's video, I'll go over these 4 teams and I'll talk about why the other teams just simply can't make it. The first team is the Philadelphia Eagles, of course. They're 8-1, they have Jalen Hurts, they were in the Super Bowl last year, and they have one of the most loaded rosters in the NFL. But specifically, why can they make it? The first thing is they're currently first place in the NFC. And being in first place at the end of the season is super important since only one team per conference gets the bye. So, being first, they already have the inside track, and they're a game ahead of the Lions and 2 games ahead of everyone else. Other than their record, Jalen Hurts has steadily improved throughout the season. The first 2 weeks he looked bad, the next 3 weeks he was turning the ball over all the time, and I was starting to wonder, is he as good as he was last year? The past 2 or 3 weeks, the answer is yes, Jalen has looked excellent, and he's even second place in the MVP conversation with Patrick Mahomes. And if I had to guess now, I would probably say that Jalen's going to win it. He has been able to lead the Eagles offense to the 3rd most points per game, even after turning the ball over 11 times so far this year, which is one of the highest turnover rates in the NFL. So even with some really unfortunate turnovers, they've been talented enough to make the plays when it matters to score points. On the defensive side of the ball, they have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL, and they are the best run defense in the NFL. Their Achilles heel is their pass defense. It has just not been very good so far this year. This is due to a mixture of injuries and really just players not performing as well as they did last year, especially James Bradbury, who has struggled mightily throughout the year. And the final thing that really helps the Eagles' chances at making the Super Bowl is their coach has been excellent his entire career. Nick Sirianni he's known how to keep the team motivated, and he knows how to read a game and call the right plays. He knows when to go for it, when to punt, when to kick a field goal. He has just been excellent, no matter how weird he is. The biggest obstacle, in my opinion, for the Eagles this year, for the remainder of this year, other than their defense, is their schedule. They have a super brutal next 5 weeks. They play the Chiefs, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Seahawks, and the Bills. And they play those all in a row. That is just one of the hardest stretches you can imagine. Their only break is that they're not playing any of the AFC North teams in this stretch. But going into the season, all Eagles fans knew it was going to be brutal, and we'll just have to see how it goes. If they can manage to go 3-2 through this 5-game stretch, they'll probably get the number 1 seed. If they go 2-3, then they probably won't, and that could easily be the difference between making the Super Bowl or not, because 1, they won't have home field advantage in the championship game potentially, and more importantly, they won't have a bye week that they really needed last year because of injuries. The second team that can make the Super Bowl from the NFC is the Detroit Lions. Yes, everybody's sweetheart, everybody loves them. I mean, how could you not? And honestly, I just started rooting against them as an Eagles fan because I'm scared they're going to take the number 1 seed. But the team has been excellent this year. They had 1 bad week against the Ravens, and the rest of the season, they haven't had any mistakes. They lost to the Seahawks in a very close game. They beat the Chiefs. I mean, I guess if you want to look at their schedule harshly, they haven't really beat anyone other than the Chiefs. And especially their offense is amazing. Jared Goff looks as good as he's ever been, even better than when he went to the Super Bowl. And that's the weak part of their offense. Their running game is potentially the best in the NFL. I know maybe the Ravens, maybe earlier you thought the Eagles, but the Lions are in the top 3 for sure for best running game in the NFL with David Montgomery and Gibbs. And this isn't even mentioning that they have a top 10 wide receiver in Amon-Ra and a really good rookie tight end in Laporta. But their defense is definitely a weakness because they can give up a bunch of points at times. But just like the Eagles, I think their coach has excellent in-game instincts and has proven he's willing to do anything. And that includes, random onside kicks, going for it on fourth down, doing fake punts, and just anything that he thinks the team needs, he'll do. He's not scared of anything. But the number one reason why I think the Lions have the best chances at being the number one seed in the NFC is, one, they only have 2 losses, so they're only 1 game behind. And then 2, their schedule is so much easier than the Eagles' schedule. The Lions have the 6th easiest remaining schedule in the NFL. Their tough games are, they have a game against the Cowboys, which of course will be tough, but the Eagles do too. And then they have 2 games against the Vikings, who are kind of iffy. I'm willing to say they're a good team. I think they'll probably get the wild card spot, but they're not a good team like the Eagles are playing, such as the 49ers, the Seahawks, the Chiefs. That it's not the same. And then they also play the Bears twice and the Packers. So the Lions could easily only lose 1 more game the rest of the year, go into the playoffs only losing 3 games, which could be enough to get the first round bye. The third NFC team that could make it to the Super Bowl is the San Francisco 49ers. So yes, everyone knows the 49ers, one of the top 2 teams in the NFC. They've looked excellent except for a few weeks where they absolutely fell apart. But in that 3-week stretch where they fell apart, they were very unlucky due to missed field goals and such, and they were hammered with injuries such as to Debo and Trent Williams. And everyone talks about Debo. The one that matters to me is Trent Williams. A team losing their best offensive line member just kills the team. And both came back against the Jaguars, and they blew them out by 31 points. So they can easily be the best team in the NFL. Not only the NFC, but in the NFL. Brock Purdy looks like he's back. And, when they're rolling, they're a super complete team. They're currently tied for 3rd with the Eagles for points scored. And they're tied for 2nd for points led up at 28 points for and 15.9 points against per game. So that means they have an average win of about 12 points. One downside I would say is, out of these 4 teams, I think Brock Purdy's probably still the worst quarterback. He's been good, great even, but the other quarterbacks are a tier above to me. And also, I don't think the head coach can really come back from behind. So that hurts as well. They do have 3 losses, so their path to the 1 seed is a little tougher, definitely tougher than the Lions, because they play the Seahawks twice, they play the Eagles, and they play the Ravens. So I think it's safe to say San Francisco will end up with probably 5 losses, so 2 more. And I think 5 losses is going to kick you off of the number 1 seed ladder. So I think either the Eagles or the Lions will get this number 1 seed. Since they wouldn't have the bye in the playoffs, it would be much more difficult to get to the Super Bowl, but they're just talented enough to make it. Then the final team that I think could win the Super Bowl is the Dallas Cowboys. So yes, they did lose to the Eagles and they got blown out by the 49ers. But their team is legit. They almost beat the Eagles, even though I don't think they should have. They almost lucked into it, I guess. But they have proven that if a team doesn't come to play against them, they're going to blow them out. They have several, almost all their wins are blowout wins. This is a little worrying because can they really play in a close game? And they've only done it once this year. But if the team they're playing against doesn't come to play, they're going to just steamroll them. Dak Prescott has looked much better this year than he has the previous few years. However, one concern is their rushing game hasn't been as good as expected, but their defense has. They have the second most points scored per game at about 30, and they have the 5th lowest points per game allowed at 18 points per game. But there's a big downside for the Cowboys, and that is that, one, they're 2 games behind the Eagles, so that alone makes winning the division tough, makes getting the 1 seed tough, and even just any home games tough in the playoffs. But they also have a fairly tough schedule remaining. They play the Seahawks, the Eagles, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Lions remaining. If they get out of that without 2 or 3 losses, I'll be very impressed. So, I mean, it just seems like either the Eagles or the Lions, mainly the Lions, will get the number 1 seed in the NFL. And if the Cowboys aren't able to pull it together and get the division title in the NFC East, they're going to struggle, and I don't think they'll make the Super Bowl without it. They have been much worse on the road than they have at home. The Cowboys are 2-3 on the road, and they are 4-0 at home. And not only that, all the home games are blowouts. All the road games are close, other than the Giants game. But the team just has not been able to travel well, and that's concerning. So the mixture of not being able to play in a close game this year, and when they were in a close game against the Eagles, they crumbled at the end. I know they drove down the field. I don't care. They didn't score. And being behind in the division by 2 games, having a tough schedule, I mean, they're going to struggle. They really need to get it together right now. They can't afford almost any more losses this year. But the team has enough talent everywhere and has blown enough teams out that I think they have to be mentioned as a team that can win the Super Bowl. The least likely out of the 4, but still, I could see it. Still possible. Okay, then there's everyone else. So I know 16 teams in the division, 4 teams that can win the Super Bowl at this point. Who am I leaving out? The entire NFC South. You're bad. You're not going to make it. The best team is the Saints, and they're bad. They just lost to Josh Dobbs, and he doesn't even know his wide receivers' names. And that leaves out the last remaining respectable team is the Seattle Seahawks, and I just don't believe in Geno Smith enough because their defense isn't great, so you need your offense to be great to overcome. And I think Geno Smith is a definite step below all of the teams above them. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts. I'll see you later.